everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to see your faces and to welcome you to this really cool event that we were able to put together. My name is Lauren. I'm one of the teacher education program instructors at the Boulder Journey School program. And I'm going to be one of the facilitators. And I'm also going to I'm doing this right here is my colleague Alex, and she's going to also be facilitating. So Alex, I'll let you introduce yourself too.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Morgan. I am the Community Outreach Specialist at Boulder Journey School. So I spend a lot of my time working with adults and supporting adults in being active learners ourselves. So I'm really grateful to have this time with you all tonight.
So basically kind of how we're going to do this is I'm going to start by just kind of introducing a couple of the different Zoom features we're going to be using and kind of just how the meeting's going to work. And then Alex and I are going to share kind of like a little context framework, kind of like set the background for why we sort of got to assembling this panel and having this discussion today. And then we will get into some questions and do some Q&A. And just be able to pick the brains of these really amazing individuals that we were able to invite to be part of this event today. And we will introduce all of them in just a few minutes. So I want to start just by talking a little bit about Zoom, and probably a lot of you have been on a lot of Zoom calls by now. So we want to put it out there. We did leave this link open because it was important to us for people to be able to access this without too many problems. But we are aware that the Zoom bombing thing happens and can happen. So we want to just sort of put that out there. And if anything weird starts to happen, we have some plans. So we'll just pause and troubleshoot and hopefully get through it. But Alex and I kind of have the meeting settings adjusted to hopefully minimize that. But we are going to lock the meeting after about 10 minutes. So if anybody knows of anybody that was planning on joining later, we are recording, so we'll be able to share this too. But that can also help prevent any unwanted visitors from jumping in when we're in the middle of it. So we want to suggest it so we've been doing several different kind of virtual dialogues using Zoom. A lot of times we suggest using gallery view so you can sort of see as many faces as possible. Because we're going to run this as a panel discussion, we're actually going to suggest that you turn on speaker view so that you can have visible the person who's talking. And then we're also going to suggest that you keep your audio and your video off, because even if you keep your audio off and you keep your video on, if you start like scratching your head or something in the background and everybody's using speaker view, then it like pops you up doing something weird. So we suggest that you turn your video off and your audio off. And then we also want to suggest that you open chat, which is, you can find that in a little icon kind of at the bottom of the screen, which will bring up a little chat box. And we will be kind of offering some opportunities to participate using chat kind of throughout. And pretty much any time throughout this, if you want to use chat to type reflections or questions for the panel, we encourage you to do that too. So we'll be kind of keeping an eye on that. And we want to actually do the first little chat task right now. So we want to invite you to type just a word into chat that says something about the way you feel right now. That can be today, that can be the general right now. But yeah, we just wanted to start by kind of taking the temperature of the room. Tired, overwhelmed, excited, yay, hungry, stressed, sleepy, snowy. Other people in Colorado, for those of you that aren't in Colorado, we have like blizzarding happening today. Peaceful, overwhelmed. So there's a big mix of emotions that we're sort of bringing into the space, and we definitely want to recognize and keep this space as a space to honor all of those different emotions. So when COVID-19 hit, none of us really knew what to do, right? We've kind of just been in this process of figuring it out, and that I would say societally we're all doing that. But in particular, the early childhood community is going through a lot right now. The idea of developing digital learning and distance learning with very young children, with babies and toddlers and preschoolers, I mean, that's an unprecedented area. And so one of the things that we started to do at Boulder Journey School is, we have this platform for professional development. We do lots of different professional development things. And we decided, what we were seeing on social media and just people we were talking to, other teachers, was just this huge desire for people to reach out and talk to each other and share ideas and just process what it is that we are trying to figure out right now, what it is that we are trying to do. So we've been hosting a series of virtual dialogues. We do them every Wednesday. So if you want to join in the future, they have very little agenda, and it's just an opportunity to come together and talk. And so we've been doing that for the past about month now. And we have started to feel that there is a need and a desire for some support around mental health and emotional wellness, and just some space to honor the struggles that we're going through and talk about them. So one of the things that we've kind of used to frame our thinking around even developing these types of experiences is based on some of the research we've been doing at Boulder Journey School over the last couple of years. And I'm going to let Alex say a little bit more about that.
So for the past few years, we have been playing with ideas that we've been referring to as digital humanity. And, especially in early childhood, there are mixed emotions around technology. And we have been embracing the idea that, our founding executive director said that we have to remember that if we truly consider that everything around us is part of who we are, that means that digital spaces are also part of who we are. And so rather than having fear around technology or having anxiety, we can embrace that digital spaces are an extension of humanity. They were created by humans, and our primary drive is to connect and to collaborate. And so by embracing this sort of idea of digital spaces for humanity, that has offered us and this is still sort of thinking about this time that we've been playing with these ideas, but it's offered us the idea, the possibilities to look at technology as a connector. So, a month ago, everything shifted, of course, and we were thrust from really playing with these ideas and choosing to embrace these ideas to being forced to enact this concept of digital humanity, which it's a very different thing when it's not a choice. And so we have tried to sort of keep those ideas in mind and frame our thinking around this virtual connection with these sort of hopeful spaces, and recognizing that connections in virtual spaces are as real as connections in physical spaces.
Yeah. And what we've seen happen in these digital spaces has been really inspiring over the past month. I mean, really inspiring and really complex, because what I see just over and over again, the reason I'm still in the early childhood field after 20 years is because I love early childhood educators. We're resilient by nature. We're creative. We enjoy challenges. We can be flexible. We can sort of roll with how energy shifts. We know how to observe. And I'm seeing all of that come through as we talk to all of you through all around the country and the world. And, at the same time, we recognize that our field has some unprecedented challenges. And we do want to acknowledge like all of the different personal and professional kind of situations that you might be finding yourself in currently. You know, some of you may be unemployed, some of you may be employed but working from home. Some of you may be, you know, going into centers and still serving children of essential workers. So there's all different kinds of, you know, sort of opportunities and stresses that are happening right now. And so we want to sort of acknowledge that, but we also want to say, like, we see you, you are amazing. And we really wanted to offer this space for all of our sort of mental health today, just to have an opportunity to invite some voices that, you know, are different from the voices that have been coming to these virtual dialogues, to share their expertise and kind of help us find some new thinking about it all. So with that, I want to move to introductions and introduce our amazing panel that we have lined up today. For those of you just joining us, just FYI, we're asking that people turn your video and your audio off. And we're suggesting that you use speaker view, which you can find up at the top of your screen, because that will keep your window focused on who's actually talking. And keeping your video off will prevent sort of other weird things from popping up during that Zoom does auto mixing, and it's not always perfect. So we're going to introduce our panelists, but we first wanted to invite all of you, our participants, to just quick type into chat while we're starting our introductions where are you joining us from, because we want to get a sense of kind of where all of you are at in the country or in the world, and, you know, where geographically our voices are coming from. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex, and she's going to introduce our first panelist.
Thank you. I'm thinking, so I'll go ahead and say your name, and then if you'll say hi so that your face will pop up also, and then I'll share your bio. And then that way people, because we're doing it in speaker view, that way people will have the opportunity to put a face to a name. So I am excited to introduce to you Danny Lewin, Dr. Lewin. If you'll say hi.
You're muted. You can unmute.
Thanks. Hello, everybody.
So Dr. Lewin is a pediatric psychologist, a sleep specialist, licensed clinical psychologist, and certified yoga instructor. And he's board certified in sleep medicine and behavioral sleep medicine. He is the associate director of the pediatric sleep medicine and director of the pulmonary behavioral medicine program at Children's National Medical Center. He's also associate professor of pediatrics at George Washington University School of Medicine. And Dr. Lewin has conducted NIH-funded research over the last 2 decades. He provides supervision of doctoral trainees, psychotherapy for parents and patients of all ages, and teaches mindfulness and meditation. And real quick before I ask you for one message, I also want to say that on a personal note, Dr. Lewin's son is the reason that I am in early childhood, because I had the great privilege to be his nanny from age 3 to 6 months. And so thank you, Dr. Lewin. And if you wouldn't mind sharing one message that you would like to offer to early childhood educators based on your area of expertise.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Alex and Lauren, for putting together this beautiful and needed symposium. And I want to thank all of you for your deep dedication to some of the most important people in the world who will be our future, certainly, and all the risks that you take and all that you do that is underfunded. So just a quick thank you. I think what I'd like to share from my perspective is that we're in a moment of obviously unbelievable challenge that causes massive anxiety. But with that comes opportunity. And the opportunity to turn around all of that anxiety and to view this as a time where we can really focus on our own principles and what we feel is most critical and important. As we kind of walk through our days and are all fixated on what symptoms we have we can think of that as a way of joining the rest of the world, because we're focused exactly the way that everyone else in the world is focused. As we walk out into the world with or without a mask, we can think about not how we're protecting ourselves, but how every action of each one of us joins us with really all humanity right now. And that I view as one of the richest opportunities of what is happening right now. And you, as the caretakers of not only children, but families as well, have the opportunity to guide a whole generation in rising to a challenge that we certainly have never seen before as a species. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you. Okay, so is Julia here with us yet? We're waiting on one person. So Julia is a parent coach, and she might be joining us, but she might have had something come up. So I'm going to jump to introduce Julie Zabolio. You can tell me if I'm saying your name right. Do you want to just say a quick hi to everyone, and then I'm going to introduce you?
Sure. Yeah. Hi. And yes, you said my name right, and thank you.
Yay. Julie is a licensed professional counselor and has worked with children and families in a variety of settings, outpatient, residential, foster care, private practice, since 1996. She has been in her current position as an infant and early childhood mental health specialist since 2012. And in her current role, she provides mental health consultation to parents, early childhood educators, and child care providers. She's able to provide services in the community in both early childhood education settings and in children's homes. And she received her Colorado Association of Infant Mental Health endorsement in 2016. So we're so lucky to have you here. Julie, what would you like to say as your kind of opening welcome message to our guests today?
Well, like Dr. Lewin, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here and for the invitation to participate. And I think I've had lots of conversations with lots of different childcare providers, early childhood educators, parents during this time via reaching out through webinars and through televideo health sessions. And I think the thing that has been helpful to me and helpful to the people that I'm working with is really, and this kind of relates to what Dr. Lewin was saying, the looking for the gift in this current situation. And part of looking for that gift is recognizing what's within our control and what's not in our control, and really trying to focus our energy on what are the things we can control and how to do that in a way that's helpful to ourselves, our families, and also helpful to the children in our lives, to be kind of that adult model of how we're handling this crisis and how we're looking for the good in what we're going through, and kind of just making the best of a really difficult situation, not sugarcoating any feelings about how difficult it is, acknowledging that, and then after acknowledging the difficulty, then recognizing what are some of the gifts that we're finding in this situation.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to now introduce Laura Connelly. Laura, if you'll say a quick hi.
Hi, guys.
Laura is a certified life and weight loss coach and a certified yoga and meditation teacher. She is obsessed with helping her clients feel like themselves once and for all, and specializes in working with her clients to create the best mindset ever so that they can free themselves from anxiety, stress, bad habits, food and body drama, and way their dream come true weight forever. She makes the deep work of becoming the best version of yourself permanent, sustainable, and fun. And Laura is also a beloved Boulder Journey School parent. So she's on this roller coaster alongside us at Boulder Journey School. And Laura, what is one message that you'd like to offer?
Yeah, well, I want to echo exactly what Dr. Lewin and Julie said, which is thank you guys. I think it's so important that we continue to connect and collaborate. But one thing I think that my children's teachers do so beautifully, and most, I should say, early childhood educators do so beautifully, is that we honor and allow and teach our kids how to feel their feelings. And we teach them that the full gamut is totally okay and it's allowed. And I saw all those emotions come in. If you guys joined late, you might not have been here, but the first task that we were asked to do is just to put in an emotion that we were feeling right now. And I think, I don't know, somewhere along the way, I think we lose that ability to really feel our feelings. And I know that there's anxiety and overwhelm and stress and uncertainty and all these negative emotions, right? And a lot of us are in resistance to those emotions. And so what I want to offer is, can we just create a little bit of space, just like we do for the children in our classroom, or just like we do for our kids, that it's okay. It's okay to be feeling these feelings. Nothing has gone wrong. There's no problem here with feeling anxiety or fear or whatever you're experiencing. And I think creating that space so that we can allow those emotions gives us so much power and gives us so much control in a world that feels out of control right now. So I would offer to everyone, whether you're an early childhood educator or not, any human, that can you just throughout the day take a beat and be like, I'm feeling anxious right now, and it's okay. It's okay is like one of my favorite mantras and one of my clients' favorite mantras as well. So that's kind of what I would offer right off the bat. It's totally okay. Just as we teach our kids it's okay, it's also okay for us adult humans to experience these negative emotions. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
sure.
All right, I'm going to introduce Teresa Melito-Connors, or Dr. NC. She's the founder of Dr. NC's Self-Care Cabaret, as well as a public school administrator in the greater Boston area. Inspired by her doctoral research, Teresa loves to help others practice better self-care, and she's deeply passionate about this mission. Teresa is a recent graduate from Lesley University's PhD in Educational Leadership program in Cambridge, Mass. And Teresa understands the challenges of balancing all of life's responsibilities and the importance of taking time for yourself. With a BA in Theater Studies from Emerson College and a Master's in Education in School Counseling from Salem State University, Teresa has a variety of experiences, from counseling special education adolescents with various mental health needs to choreographing professional musicals. Teresa has been presenting at different conferences in New England, and she has a couple book chapters in the works. So welcome, Teresa, and what would you like to offer as a message to all of the audience?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is very exciting to be here, and I see that there are some other folks from Massachusetts, which I'm very excited about. But I want to say, very simply, go easy on yourself. We tend to have a lot of compassion for others when we're in helping professions, but you also need to have that compassion for yourself. And there's no playbook for this. There isn't precedence really for what we can do. Our regulations weren't written with pandemics in mind, especially in Massachusetts in education, that's evident. So go easy on yourself. Take a minute, be compassionate, and make sure that compassion you're giving to others, you're also giving to yourself.
Thank you. Excellent advice.
And I am going to introduce Michelle Star Beach. Michelle, if you want to say a quick hi.
Hello.
Thank you. So Michelle Beach has 13 years of experience working with families as the founder and executive director of the Patchwork School, which is a nonprofit school for young children. She's also a registered psychotherapist with an MA in educational psychology and is completing her third year in mindfulness-based transpersonal counseling at Naropa University. She also has offered parent, family, and couples counseling at the Louisville Family Center since 2017. And in addition, is a mother of 3 children, and she feels her children have been both her greatest joy and her best teachers. And what is one message that you would like to offer?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate getting to be here with all of you. And I definitely want to echo the sentiments that have been expressed, that this is both a gift and an opportunity, and that we need to be kind to ourselves. I think one of the gifts that I've really been finding in this moment is that it is bringing social emotional well-being to the forefront, because we really just can't ignore it, and we can't necessarily just keep powering through with all that's happening. I want to share that I, just before I got on this call, found out that one of my good friends' grandfather passed away, and so I just want to share that I can be here and be excited and also feel like the grief and the pain. And so I guess that's kind of my main message, is that I want to echo what Laura said, is that we, as leaders of our schools and as leaders of our classrooms, have an opportunity to model those feelings and actually bring that pain, not just to know it inside ourselves, but like even express it and say that, I feel really sad today. I feel overwhelmed today. And by showing that, that we are offering others a gift, because we're modeling self-awareness and self-regulation, and that is helpful for the children to actually see that we have to do that as well. So that's the message I want to offer, is that just bringing our pain and authenticity to the forefront is actually good for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I appreciate you mentioning that we do often hold multiple emotions at the same time.
Well, thank you, all of you, so much. I think that provides a really nice sort of jumping off foundation for the rest of our discussion. But before we jump into the discussion, Danny has offered to lead us all in a meditation to kind of further kind of ground ourselves. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Lewin. You're muted.
Sorry. So this draws from a couple of my teachers and well-known teachers, a meditation that comes from both Song Lin, which is a tradition in Buddhist meditation, and Jack Kornfeld, who's also a wonderful, rich meditation teacher. So just together, if we can all begin by sitting comfortably in our chair, putting your hands on your thighs, and finding a posture. Well, this will be quick, just about 5 minutes. Finding a posture that is relaxed but erect and alert, so that you're really working toward presence and awareness of the moment in a very attentive way. And just focus on your breath and your body and how your breath moves your body. You can close your eyes, you can pick a fixation point, and coming back always to your breath and this breath now, and this breath. And then become aware of the environment and the sounds in your immediate environment, what is right here, right around you. And take a moment to really dig into those sounds, perhaps an air handler or refrigerator, and you can go deeper into that and hear the pulsing of that sound, or perhaps pitches in that sound. And now extend your hearing out beyond the room that you're in, beyond out into the world, which is a much quieter world than it was a couple of months ago. But listen for subtle sounds outside. Imagining what those might be. And then bring your attention back to the sounds in your immediate room or your home. And as our attention shifts back and forth from outside to inside, and perhaps we have a thought that distracts us, it's those shifts that are natural and human. And there's nothing about a shift in attention or a loss of attention that is in any way wrong. Just greet it and acknowledge it if there's a shift or something comes into your mind that's intrusive or perhaps unwanted, or you're not even sure where it comes from. And now focus on your breath, and not changing anything, but just be aware of the temperature of the air as it comes in through your nostrils, where the cool air touches the inside of your nostrils, and then as you breathe out, the warm air warms those areas up again. Breathing in cool air and allowing that cool air to go further up into your nostrils, maybe into your sinuses and behind your eyes. And as you breathe out, really intentionally, with effort and care, warm those same areas again. And try that a few more times. And now moving the air down further into your throat, perhaps your upper chest, a cool sensation, and then an intentional warming. And now drawing that air even deeper down into the tops of your lungs, or perhaps you can even feel the cool air filling your lungs. And then an intentional warming of all those areas, almost as if you're embracing all of them or calming them. And then take a moment to just lift your shoulders gently up to your ears and allow them to drop down. Feel that beautiful sense of release, letting go. Similarly, drop your jaw, relax your tongue in your mouth. Allow your face to just relax and let go. Let gravity draw your face down. And then you can intentionally bring a little bit of gravity back to the corners of your mouth, just a gentle smile. And now focusing on the erectness that you have in your chair, the sitting at attention. I'd like you to imagine yourself a tree. You can be a tree that you know well, or a beautiful old oak or a redwood. And feel the strength of that tree in your body. With your crown of your head reaching up toward the sky, and beautiful leaves reaching toward light and sun. And now bringing your attention to where you're seated and your feet on the floor. And those are your roots holding you to the ground, firm, strong, connected deeply to the ground. That root which allows storms to pass by, intense winds to pass by, and allows you to still hold the attention that you're feeling right now. See if you can imagine the networks of roots that you have that reach out and around you and out to those perhaps in your home and in your community. And I'd like to share with you one last practice. I'd like you to imagine someone who you care for deeply standing in front of you. And this does not have to go too heavy or deep, and actually shouldn't, but just somebody that you care about. And see that person in front of you. See the colors of their eyes, the depth of their gaze, their hair, perhaps what they're wearing. And imagine or be aware of a struggle that that person has. Just be aware in a very empathic way what the feeling that that person has internally feels like. It's a struggle for them. And as you breathe in, I'd like you to try to breathe in that challenge that they have and hold that for a moment. And then as you breathe out, say a couple of words to them. I care about you. I love you. I'm there for you. And try that a few times, breathing in their pain and breathing out a kind thought to them. And now, without focusing on anything in particular, just take a moment to say that same word to yourself. Be aware of how this has perhaps brought emotion, where that emotion resides in your body. Become aware again of your breath. And then as you're ready, you can just blink your eyes open. So I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to share a few moments with everybody and say that just briefly, and I know that there are other practitioners who probably have a lot of wonderful insight into this kind of practice as well, but just that this is a form of self-care, taking a moment, being present, and as others had said so eloquently, self-compassion, as Dr. MC said, taking care of our feelings, as Laura said, is so critical at this point in time. And these are practices that you can incorporate in your daily life, even for a minute a day. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. That was very, very grounding. With that, we're going to jump into some questions that we've prepared for the panel. And we have a few questions that are kind of like big questions that I'm going to pose, and then we're going to move into more of like Q&A style. So feel free, everyone, and for those of you who just joined us, feel free to type questions or reflections into the chat. If you type questions for Q&A into the chat, we'll grab those and be able to pose those to the panel. And then we also have some questions that we've crowdsourced from our website over the last week. So the first question I want to ask to our panel is, so early childhood educators are helpers by nature, right? They're human-oriented field, and you know we're very used to going above and beyond in the service of others. And part of our work typically involves a lot of social feedback. You know, we're with people all day, and we're seeing reactions, and we're responding to reactions. An infant teacher that I know said, you know, we're used to making micro decisions all day long. That's all we do because we're responding to what's going on around us. And so we're trying to, in a lot of ways, still do our work and still function for those people who are still going into centers and serving children. Maybe they're wearing masks, maybe they have to stay further away from staff and colleagues. And for people that are creating, you know, digital learning experiences for young children, like we're just not able to get that same amount of like social feedback that we're used to. And so something that we've been hearing on a lot of our dialogues is feelings of obviously like grieving the loss of time with children and physical proximity because we're so dependent on that. And also feelings of almost like imposter syndrome or self-doubt, like creating content for, you know, your class that is far away and you're meeting with them on Zoom or you're sharing a YouTube video with them. Like you just don't have access to that same kind of like ongoing, like in the moment feedback. And so we've heard that there's a lot of kind of like anxiety and just sort of, you know, doubt and questioning happening for people. So I was curious, and anybody can jump in on this. What are your thoughts about that? Do you have any suggestions or kinds of ideas around supporting our own mental health, kind of knowing that we're sort of going through that?
I'll jump in quickly.
Okay.
So just a thought on mourning and grieving. I think all traditions have a way, religious, spiritual, personal traditions. We all have a way of dealing with loss, and we are really in a profound place of loss right now, really without any idea of where our future is leading us and what that future will look like, which makes that grieving and loss of social contact and engagement probably much more challenging. So with any loss, and if you think of someone in your life who you've lost, the sense that you bring with them their voice every single day in everything that you do, that they inform your decisions, that their spirit continues to be with you in what they've taught you, the joy and laughter that you've shared together. You as teachers contain so much beauty from these amazing children that even though we feel the separation as we do from a loved one who we've lost, I think that same spirit of connection is so deeply within you in everything that you do that you can touch that. It might take a moment of time to remind yourself that you carry with you the spirit of all those children and all your interactions and all your energy and your insight, no matter what you're doing, where you go.
I love that you just said that, because in the virtual dialogues we've been doing over the past few weeks, this theme of connection comes up again and again, and people are doubting the connection. But then when we start talking to each other, they start to see all the ways they are able to connect and have those relationships. And so I love that you just pointed that out. Michelle, were you going to jump in on that too?
Yeah, I mean, the connection is definitely so important. And I think that right now, like you mentioned, Lauren, that having that lack of input and, we're reaching out to families digitally. Sometimes they have capacity to respond, sometimes they don't. That one way that we're trying to bridge that gap for educators is to connect the teachers to one another. And this is a practice that we've done at our school in the past, but we kind of have to find new ways to do it now, is in helping the teachers get together, whether it's in a small group on Zoom or whether it's through an all staff gathering, and just sharing that these feelings are coming up, that, we don't always know what to do. We're not sure how to talk to this parent or that, that family, and that by sharing those losses and those experiences with one another, we can get that sort of input, whether it's asking each other for advice or whether it's just being heard, and that we're not alone in having this experience. It can be so valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think also to piggyback on that. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Actually, you're going to like this one. You mentioned something about mindsets. I think it was in your bio, and I'm big on, a growth mindset also. And I think for right now, it's really easy to slip into kind of a negative mindset. You've probably seen those memes going around on social media about, I'm stuck at home. You're not stuck at home. You're safe at home. I was really excited to see that the title of this workshop or panel this evening used physical distancing instead of social distancing. Is when we think we can still be social. We're being social right now. We can't physically be in the same space, but there's a difference in that mindset and kind of what you tell yourself and how the messages you're giving to your children, your own children and your students. And your loved ones also during this time. Acting from a place of love is very different than acting from a place of fear. We're not quarantined. We're choosing to isolate for our safety and the wellness of others. So it's a difference in kind of how you phrase it. And it's easy right now in this situation to kind of go and see the negative. And that's really going to be difficult to kind of pull yourself out of. But if you can catch yourself in those moments and shift it ever so slightly, it'll make a big difference in how you feel.
Yeah, I love that. It's so good. I can piggyback on that, which is because I'm basically a mindset coach, really, right? So what you guys talked about was how important it is to have a practice of self-care. And we also talked about how important it is to connect with one another. And I think, Lauren, you mentioned that we're not getting this feedback, right? Oftentimes you guys are sending out emails, or there's just not as much of connection as there used to be. And I know I do this, right? Like, I say something or I send an email, and then if I get a response back and I like that response, I feel really good and I feel really happy and I feel really connected. So we are literally in that moment abdicating responsibility for our feelings to somebody else's actions. And we can get into big, huge trouble when that is the case, right? It goes back to, again, I think what Julie was saying, we have to really take a look at what we can control and what we can't control. So yes, reach out, to go for that connection. But when you don't get the connection back, don't make it mean something about who you are, right? So I would really recommend to all of the humans to decide, who are you? Who are you as an educator? And commit to that belief regardless of what's going on out there externally. Because you may get some amazing feedback, you may not, but that has nothing to do with your ability to teach and bring these kids up and to inspire and to do whatever it is that you are here on this earth to do. So I think it's just really important to make a decision on who you are in your role and commit to that regardless of what anyone else gives back to you.
I think that's such an important point. You're just reminding me, I had a conversation with a teacher at Boulder Journey School last week who was sharing some of her struggles. And part of it was that we're using all these different platforms, social media platforms and blogs and all these things, which we had before. Like, we've been using blogs, we've been using Facebook groups, all of these things to communicate and connect with families. But right now, because we don't have that classroom time, like, the number of likes that you get on your post to families, it means something different, or it's triggering a different feeling than, like, we're used to doing this, but the situation hasn't necessarily changed, but it has. And so, like, needing the likes, right? And I hadn't thought about that before, but I'm like, yeah, right now you do have to be intentional about deciding not to need the likes.
It's hard work for sure, but it's such worthy work, because then you're untouchable, right? Like, then you've got your own back no matter what.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to add into, for teachers to take maybe some of the pressure off yourself of creating perfect lesson plans, of getting content out to kids, and realize that the most important thing that you're giving to kids right now is that relational connection and the continuity of that relationship. The experience I've had on my end doing telehealth with parents and kids is they get really excited to see me, and that feels good. And so it's thinking about the most important pieces of your job with kids, especially when it comes to social and emotional health, is the power of relationship, the healthy modeling that you do. I know a couple of people have touched on the importance of acknowledging feelings and letting feelings be okay. So really the heart of social emotional work is helping kids form positive, healthy relationships and be able to identify and express and regulate their feelings. And so the degree to which you can make that part of your curriculum and say, yeah, I am sad, I miss you guys, but how great is it to see your face today? And I see you smiling, you must be excited to see me too. So that you're really building on those important key elements of social emotional health, which is relationships and emotional regulation. And those are sort of the overarching lessons, I think, that are probably the most important for kids right now. The things about colors and counting and learning the ABCs is all important stuff too. I don't want to knock that. But when we look at school readiness for kids, what studies are finding is social emotional health has to be at the foundation for the other school readiness skills to be the most effective.
Thank you so much. That's so important. And I just noticed that we had our sixth panelist jump in, and I apologize because Julia is on the West Coast, and I just did not give her the right time zone translation. So I'm thinking that maybe you got caught up in the time zones, which happens a lot. But so, hi, Julia, welcome. So I'm just gonna divert really quick and introduce Julia. So Julia, we've kind of just got started talking about some of the discussion questions. We just talked about the first one. So yeah, you can just jump in. So everyone, I'm so pleased that Julia McGarry is here. Julia has been working with children of all ages since 1998 and has a master's degree in human development and education from the Boulder Journey School Teacher Ed program. She became a mother in 2015 and through her own journey realized that the best way to provide long-term support to children was to support their parents. Her years of professional experience combined with being a parent herself has given her insight into the many challenges parents face, especially parents of sensitive and spirited children. Through one-on-one coaching, she helps parents drop their reactive patterns, minimize power struggles and challenging behaviors, and find more joy and ease in their relationships with their children. So Julia, I just want to give you an opportunity to say hi to all of our group and maybe share kind of like one thought that you want to say just off the bat in terms of your background and a message you would like to offer early childhood educators right now.
Yeah, hi, I'm excited to be here and I'm so sorry that I got the time wrong. I just, for early childhood educators, if you're anything like I was as an educator, you probably carry your work around with you a lot, especially right now. And that's a big part of why I want to be here, is to help you translate from, I don't know, I'm a little like, I'm a little flustered just getting the time wrong. So
it's totally fine.
Yeah, but we're all in this together. And if you're carrying a lot of weight right now, it's okay to set some of that down. And the same is true for the parents you're working with. So I'm looking forward to just like diving into the questions and offering some ideas for you all.
Awesome, thank you so much. And Michelle made a really beautiful point just a few minutes ago about it's okay to carry lots of different emotions in the same bag at the same time. And so you included. We're all in this boat. All right, so I am going to pose the next question to the panel. So the next thing that and perfect timing, Julia. The next thing we wanted to sort of toss out there, because educators, early childhood educators are trying to support parents from afar who are going through ranges of their own levels of crisis and anxiety and fear and all of these emotions. What are your thoughts about some best ways to support families right now, like in ways that can be supportive of their mental health and wellness, also keeping in mind that we're taking care of our own, but because working with families and partnering with families is such a huge part of early childhood. So I want to kind of toss that out there, and whoever wants to jump in first, take it away.
I'll jump in here if that's okay. I guess this is a little bit of segueing off of what Julia was talking about with carrying that weight. And as educators, I think that, the parents are as well. I mean, I have my parent hat on, kids are upstairs and I'm trying to also do this. So I get where they're coming from. And I think one thing we can offer them is giving them the space to connect to their feelings as well. One way we can kind of help set down that weight is just by acknowledging that it's there. I was on a call recently with a family and I felt so excited to see the kids. It was just me and the mom and the two kids. And at the end of it, I also just felt this huge wave of sadness come over me because I couldn't hold them. And for early childhood educators, touch is actually an important part of what we do. And so grieving that ability to give them a hug or, and just acknowledging that that's real, I think is important both for the teachers and for the parents, because they're grieving the fact that you are kind of like a part of their family and that we're not there to help them. So I think, that's kind of my general message in all of this is that we can just presence our feelings and let them know that they're okay. And then that gives them permission to do the same.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that too, Michelle. A lot of what we talk about in early childhood mental health is the parallel process. And so what you're describing is exactly that, allowing parents to have their feelings, validating their feelings, and allowing them space and time to vent and express themselves, so that then they are kind of able to then offer the same to their children. So we're giving to the parents what we're hoping the parents can then turn and give to their children, and really talk about that process and the importance. There was a quote from Mr. Rogers about, I can't remember the exact quote, but anyway, he talks about not feeling like you have to put a happy smile on things, and just to really be able to say that things are not okay. I am worried, or I am upset. And, you know, as your adult, as your person, I'm going to help us figure out how to get through this together. And so really giving parents permission to not be okay. And then at the same time to help them find ways to cope positively, and then turn around and offer the same skills to their kids in that parallel process.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that piece too, about offering the ways in which you're regulating and you are coping. You know, I'm gonna give myself a little hug here because I can't hug you, or I'm gonna take a deep breath, and yeah, modeling that self-regulation. Thanks for bringing that in too.
I think we can also encourage families to really look for the opportunities and look for the gifts, as hard as it may seem. But what Dr. Lewin was saying in the beginning, in my school district here in Massachusetts, they've been doing, the high school students have been doing Corona vlogs every day, and it's been wonderful. And one of the assignments they got was to interview a family member. And it was kind of striking how many parents mentioned how nice it is that they can have family dinners together. So, you know, sometimes we've gotten so far from what's important, and we take so much for granted that it takes a global pandemic for us to have dinner together again. So I think if we can encourage families to really look for those moments of hope and those moments of beauty within this, and encourage them to find them, as hard as it might be, and maybe they can't access that all the time, but to kind of encourage them to do that, I think can be helpful.
And kind of going along with that, I'm seeing a lot of parents that I talk to struggling with like connecting with their kids right now. I think there's a lot of effort that's being conscientiously put into creating connection, when some of our kids just need somebody to be there with them and just hold the space for them. And I think that's something we're really good at identifying and doing as early childhood educators. It's important for us to do it for the parents too. But I mean, if in the classroom, if you have a child who's not engaging with the things that you're setting out and they're really upset, we're pretty good at just sitting with them and letting them be upset. And I think a lot of parents are still figuring that out. So holding space for them and just supporting them through that, and saying, you know, it's okay if you just go over and sit next to them. Or if they don't want to be on the Zoom call, that's the other piece that I'm seeing coming up a lot, is that the more sensitive kids like get on the Zoom call and they don't feel like their voice is being heard, and they're seeing their friends and it's just making them more sad. And then it shows a little bit on the call, but it really shows up at home. So knowing that's going on and opening the dialogue with parents that like this is not just them, and there are ways that their kids can connect with us beyond the Zoom call.
I think that's so important that you brought that up, that, you know, their child's not necessarily the only one, because it's like, you know, I just talked about the teachers feeling that lack of social feedback and that, you know, togetherness, and, you know, families aren't getting that either. And that's also something that comes up on these conversations we've had with teachers, where teachers are like, I just don't even know if anybody likes it, or, you know, but then like I've had conversations with parents that are like, oh yeah, my child is too. They like play in the corner while like the thing is going on, but like they'll like check in with it. They'll like go over to it and then like, you know, say something, and then like leave the screen and then say something. And it's like, there's all these different ways of engaging, and none of us have the full picture So you're so right that we have to be opening dialogue about like, how is this going? And just being really genuine about being open to that.
And I loved what Julia was saying about holding the space, because I think that holding space is like kind of this esoteric nuance skill, right? To really be able to hold space for the parents is all about not going down the rabbit hole of emotions with them and like letting them have their emotions and it being okay without like jumping into the pool with them. I think that the analogy of a swimming pool is really helpful. So say your parent, the parent of one of your kids is coming forth, like I was reading in the chat box, and they're coming forth really angry and they're upset and they're stressed. Can you just let them have their stress and their whatever else is coming with it without trying to fix it, without jumping in the pool with them? Because when we jump in the pool with them, all we do is create more fear and anxiety and anger, whatever. But when we're outside of the pool and we're like really holding space for them, we can like, I mean, it's so cheesy, right? But we can actually offer a lifeline. We can actually offer the raft or whatever. So I think holding space is something that we could all during this time practice doing. I think as a culture, we're not that great at holding space because we haven't been taught how to do it. And this is probably going to be super unpopular, but I'm going to say it anyways. I would challenge you guys to experiment with empathy and sympathy. And just experiment with it. I think sometimes sympathy gets a bad rap and empathy gets like a really amazing rap. But what often can happen is when we are fully in empathy, like we're saying, so many of us are carrying all this weight. That's what happens. We're carrying all this weight and we're weighted down and we're not able to show up as who we want to be because we've taken on everyone else's stuff. That's empathy. Sympathy is I'm outside of the pool. I acknowledge, I validate, I'm with you, I see you, but I'm not taking all of that on as mine. That's yours. And I find personally, and with my clients, that we get way better results and we can just show up as who we want to show up as when we're in sympathy and not in empathy. Because we can stand our ground, we can really offer a lifeline versus going down that hole, so to speak. So I just think it's something to experiment. I'm not saying write off empathy altogether. There's just been a lot of research coming out about the case against empathy. So it'd just be kind of cool for you to reflect for yourself, okay, how do I show up when I'm fully in empathy? How do I show up when I'm in sympathy? What works better? What results do I get when I'm here versus here? And so it's just something to kind of reflect on for yourself.
Could I add one thing to that? I think that's a really interesting point you're making about sympathy and empathy. And one thing that I've been doing a lot of encouraging parents to do is to recognize when they have capacity for one versus the other. So sometimes I have capacity to be very empathetic with my child and sit, and maybe we even cry together for a moment. And sometimes I do not. I don't have capacity for either sympathy or empathy. And what I've been offering to parents a lot is that it's okay to sometimes say, I don't have capacity, or it's okay to put the TV on longer than you usually would, because that is you putting your own oxygen mask on first. We don't have capacity. I mean, I saw the post about being a parent versus a teacher, and I completely agree. It's very different. I have a completely different level of capacity for my own children. And yes, we've used a lot of more screen time than usual, and I don't necessarily feel thrilled about that. And if I don't put my own oxygen mask on, I can't even tell the difference between sympathy and empathy. I don't have capacity. So really offering to parents, my suggestion is to invite them to be very gracious with themselves, to give themselves lots of latitude, so that then in those moments where they do have capacity, they really can do what you're saying and experiment and see how to connect with their child without, losing it.
Yeah, I love that. I needed to hear that as a parent.
So I love that, linking what Michelle said to Julia, or said, and then linking it to what Julia said, is that parents who are scared and have a lot of fear and trepidation about this new relationship that they had with their children and needing to be with them all the time really is a challenge. So dealing with any of those emotions that that we all have, I mean, we all bring these fears to get forward. The way of thinking about emotion in one way is that it's transient, and it's not necessarily something that has to rule what you're doing. It can be viewed as simply a linkage between a thought and a physical sensation. I mean, I think that that's kind of the core definition of emotion, and that recognizing the thought and recognizing the physical sensation for parents can be very helpful. Just to begin to uncouple those and manage them a little bit. Another way of thinking about that, and certainly what we do in psychology, and I know teachers do all the time, is that when we're with a child who's really struggling, we feel what they feel. And sometimes we're judging their behavior, but we're not tuning in to the internal feeling that we have when we're with them. And it's the internal feeling that we have when we're with a child that really gives a beautiful opening to understand their internal life. So taking that mindful moment and reflecting on the emotion that we feel with a child tells us a lot about how they're feeling internally. And if you'll forgive me, just the empathy, sympathy, and I want to add one other word to that, because it's such an important concept, is compassion. Also, so if simply empathy is feeling what someone else feels, compassion is a whole other link. And there's a bunch of research on mental health and medical providers that there's empathy burnout, and it's really a misnomer that there's compassion burnout. In fact, what the data points to is that compassion prevents burnout, and compassion is simple, where you don't necessarily have to feel what the other person is feeling, but you can share with them just a loving, supportive thought, some compassionate thought, and not living just in a place of empathy on feeling what another person is feeling.
Such important things to think about. I want to jump to an audience question, and Alex has kind of been monitoring the chat, and it seems like there's several that are kind of connected. So Alex, do you have a question from the audience that you want to pose?
Yeah, absolutely. And this sort of builds off of what we were just talking about. So Libby shared that her daughter's feeling afraid right now and only feeling safe with family, and wondering if we can generate some specific strategies for supporting children in fear, or some more specific. I know we just touched on a couple.
Another one comes to mind, which is, I don't think we've talked about this yet, but is body awareness and body connection to the fear. So oftentimes when I'm feeling fear, I might feel it, say, as like a clenched knot in my stomach, or as like fluttering in my heart. And so when I can voice that and acknowledge it to my child, it can let them know that if they're having sensations, that those are normal. So it can help the threatening feeling of the sensation in the body actually relieve a little bit, just to know that that is an okay sensation to feel, and it can help the child connect the mind and the body. So that's something that I encourage all the time with all the feelings, whether it's fear or anger. Anger, you might say, oh, I have this like tension in my forehead, and help them and ask them if they can feel it in their body as well. That can help us get back into our body.
So an example that we often give is defining fear or anxiety, and a very simple way that most children can understand very clearly is what it feels like to step off the curb into the street and sense a car rushing toward you. That's fear, and that's good. I mean, all of these emotions have just a beautiful place in our human history as protective. So if the child has some understanding that their fear has absolute real basis in things that protect us. But when that fear becomes decoupled from the reality of where we are, that there is a stop sign, or that there is a traffic light and there is a walk sign, and we can rely on all those cues, that can also be very, very important. And just again, echoing what you just said, that linking it to a physiological feeling really, really helps us gain some control of an emotion.
And just going along with what you were both saying, being able to articulate it for yourself and identify it in yourself helps you move through it too. So it's modeling it for your child, but it's also helping you process the emotion rather than just push it aside. So.
All right, so I will toss another question out there. And it's similar to the question that we were just talking about, but adding kind of another layer too. And I think something that we've heard in lots of different ways is that the negative feelings that families and teachers are sort of noticing in children is then causing the adults to feel stress and anxiety. And they're, it's kind of that piece where it's sort of like this cycle. And so as teachers, we're removed from being actively in that cycle in the home. But I think that teachers are trying to support families in kind of navigating some of that too. So I just don't know if any of you could talk a little bit about that. So it's like related to children's feelings of stress, anxiety, children's difficult feelings, but then they're sort of triggering other feelings in the adults and then kind of feeding off each other.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So a great metaphor that I teach parents and teachers as well is the idea that as adults, we want to be thermostats with kids and not thermometers. And I got this metaphor in my play therapy training, but the idea is that, if a thermometer is working, when a room gets hot, the thermometer heats up. So a thermometer parent analogy would be your child gets really upset and raises their voice. You as a parent feel stress from that and you raise your voice in response. A thermostat, on the other hand, if the room starts to get hot, the thermostat's going to register the heat and start to cool the room down again. So as parents, we can be the thermostat for our children, that when they're upset, and it's kind of like Laura was saying, we don't have to jump in the pool with them. We can be that thermostat and recognize, yes, I'm getting a little bit stressed because my brain does that when I hear somebody yelling, but I can take a deep breath. I can tell myself I got this and realize that I don't have to react to my child's feelings in that moment. I can let them have feelings separate from me. And I can recognize my own feelings, take a deep breath, use positive self-talk, do something to regulate myself, so then I can help my child get regulated again. And so somebody mentioned the mask analogy about on the airlines, that put on your own mask first so that you can help somebody else. So the thermostat is a lot like that. We really can't teach children emotional regulation until we're able as adults to regulate our own emotions. And so that thermostat thermometer metaphor has been a really helpful teaching tool for me to bring that awareness to parents and help them recognize and look at places and ways that they can be better thermostats. And also too, recognizing that being a thermostat is really hard. And I think, Michelle, you touched on that there's some days that our capacity to be thermostats is not there. So recognize we're all going to be thermometers sometimes. And in those moments, we can apologize to our kids and say, hey, you know what? I got really frustrated and I yelled. I know I'm telling you it's not okay to yell. It's not okay for me as mom to yell either. So let's see here's what I'm going to do when I get frustrated so that I don't yell next time, and really do that adult modeling and kind of practice what we preach. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's a tool that I teach and use with parents a lot.
I love that. I think metaphors are so effective.
And similarly, always encouraging parents that I work with to call themselves out when they start to react, but they don't mean to. So like a lot of the parents I'm working with are really trying to change these patterns, but then they get triggered and they are overwhelmed already and they just fall into the pattern that they're trying to avoid. And so we work on noticing when it's happening and just saying like, oh, wow, I'm starting to yell and I'm really working on not yelling. So I'm going to stop and take a deep breath or whatever process they have that they're using to ground themselves to disengage from that behavior, right? So, and then it's also modeling for the child. Like when you do start to get dysregulated, you can catch yourself and use your tools to come back to a more even-keeled place.
I think it's important to look too at why we as parents are sometimes, especially now, becoming dysregulated, right? What is the thought behind the dysregulation? And usually, at least for me and my clients, there's a should happening. My kids shouldn't be having a temper tantrum. My kids shouldn't be whatever, fill in the blank. So I think it's really helpful to see, is there a should lurking behind my dysregulation or whatever you want to call that emotion? Is there a should hiding behind my reaction? And if you can identify that thought, it'll be a lot easier for you to respond versus react, because you know, okay, I'm thinking right now in this moment, my kid shouldn't be. Well, no, they totally should be. That's exactly what's happening. Again, nothing has gone wrong. There's nothing to fix within your kid. Your kid is being your perfect kid, right? But then somewhere along the lines, we got this idea that they shouldn't be acting the way that they are in that very moment. And then that thought is usually what causes, again, at least for me and my clients, the reaction or the dysregulation, which usually leads to yelling or screaming or showing up a way that we don't want to show up. So I think it's really helpful to identify the thought and then decide, what do I want to think instead of my kid shouldn't be fill in the blank. Maybe it's, no, you know what, nothing's gone wrong here and I'm going to take a deep breath, or my kid should be doing exactly what they're doing, or whatever works for you. You have to try on the thoughts to, figure out what resonates. But I think just to piggyback on what you said, is kind of is helpful for a lot of people.
And if you can find the thought and then shift it and practice it. That's the key piece. So that when you do catch yourself, you can say, oh yeah, I'm working on thinking that nothing has gone wrong here.
Yeah.
and then you can ground yourself into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're all caught up in the shoulds right now, especially right now. They should be wearing masks. This shouldn't be happening, or the president should have, or my kids should, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we're just arguing with reality and there's no upside. So I would just watch for the shoulds.
So along those lines, there's a beautiful quote that's attributed to Viktor Frankl, a writer, psychiatrist who was a victim of the Holocaust, survivor of the Holocaust, which is that between the stimulus and the response, there's a pause, there's a moment, there's a gap, and it's in that gap that we have all the freedom, or that is where all human freedom resides. So it's that moment of pause, that moment of separation that allows us to really, really choose. And parents can get facile in observing that in themselves and their response and taking a moment of pause. Obviously, the modeling that for their children, getting emotional, losing control, apologizing, and then regaining control is so powerful for parents. But then also the specific tools that a parent can use. We feel cared for when someone says what we're thinking and feeling. And if a parent can in a very connected way, use their own feeling, pause, and reflect back to the child what their internal feeling is. Usually they're going to capture what that child's internal feeling is. I mean, as teachers, having observed in classrooms over the years, watching teachers distract, shift set, say what a child is feeling in a beautiful way really moves a child forward. And so 2 specific tools that a parent can use is that self-reflection, a moment of distraction, bringing the child to something new, and then giving the child some kind of medium in which they can express their fear at the time, playing it out with a doll, with a drawing, using play therapy, as Julie mentioned, to just briefly interpret or put out as a hypothesis what an emotion is. And when the child hears that emotion touched on correctly, for them, again, that helps them gain control.
I'd like to just circle all those amazing ideas back to what you as an educator can do to kind of convey some of this to parents, because it can feel like a lot. Like all of a sudden we're being parent coaches and we're supposed to try to tell them all these things. And so just like a simple tool, I had a parent call the other day and she was really upset because she was saying, I should be putting out more art supplies. I don't know, why can't I seem to do this? I just don't want it. I don't want him drawing all over the wall. And so one simple question that I usually ask parents first is, what's happening for you in that moment when he gets the crayons out? Like what's happening? And she said, well, I don't like a mess. I just don't like to have to clean it all up. I don't want to have to, but then I have this other part that has this should, like I should be putting it out. And so like Laura was saying, that simple question of what was happening for you in that moment can help them find their should. And then usually I just trust the parent to actually be able to solve the problem themselves. I mean, as a therapist, this is what I do as well, is I would just reframe it back to them. So what would work better for you? You have one part that wants to put out the crayons and one that doesn't. What if these two could come to some kind of compromise? And then usually they have the solution. So she had an idea of putting out not crayons, but something that was not as messy, that she felt comfortable leaving out. So that's just a suggestion for how you might approach that when you're in the conversation with a parent.
I love that. Thank you for pulling that all together, Michelle. That's actually something that's been coming up a lot when we've been having conversations with teachers, is sort of this pressure to all of a sudden be parent coaches, but then also recognizing that like right now, it's not the time to focus on teaching parents everything we know. We're trying, that's not the point, is to be parent educators. But just yesterday we had the terminology coach come up, and it's like, there are people that do coaching as a professional field, and that's not our professional field, but it is part of what we're being kind of asked and expected to do. So hearing all of your perspectives on this and being able to tie that all together is, I think, so helpful. Alex, you had a question that you pulled from the chat, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the chat and also from our past discussions, there have been so many amazing instances of families and educators having these wonderful connections. There also have been times when those connections either are not what the educators are hoping for, so families are reacting out of a place of fear or frustration. And on the flip side of that, there are families who are not responding to what the educators are offering at all. Do you have strategies for connecting with those families who are either reacting to their own fears or are not responding to teachers, to also help the educators maintain sort of a sense of balance of taking care of themselves while taking care of those families on those ends of the spectrum?
I could jump in with one thought here, is that sometimes I suggest to our teachers to actually think about the parents the way we do the children. So meeting the parents just where they're at. If the parents are at a place of, I just can't talk to you, or I don't like this, just almost seeing that as like their own inner child and connecting with it in the same way we do with the children. So validating that that's valid, that's where they're at. You know, and with some families, we're meeting them at like, all we do is email every now and then and check in, and that's all we can do. And then, you know, like I think Julia said earlier, is just sort of setting that weight down, that like, I've met them where they're at, and that's really all that I can do. And they get to then choose where to go from there.
I was kind of thinking about this before the call, and just the idea that some families may not even be responding to emails. And how do we continue to support them if they're not even talking back to us? So my thought with that was, if you have the energy, if you have the time to make a recorded video that you could share with them, so that like there is a point of connection for that child if they choose to share it with their child. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But then taking so that idea of disconnect, like setting the weight down, a practice that's been really useful for me lately, and just setting the weight down of the families that I'm helping and serving, is before I go to bed, or like as I'm laying in bed, I just visualize, it's a form of meditation really, but like heavy gates to like a village, right? So like I'm shutting the castle gates and shutting all of the stuff outside, and then I just sit down in my, like I see myself sitting down with my back against the gates and just sitting there with all of those things outside the gates.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering, Julie, in your role right now, what have your conversations been like in terms of supporting children and families? And I know this question about what do we do with the families we're not getting anything back from, and part of that is like, you know, we want the connection and we want to engage, and then another part of it is like we're scared for them. There's some families that we're, you know, like we know that being able to go to school was a huge part of their support system, and you know, we just don't know what other kinds of trauma is happening within the situation. But I'm curious from your perspective, what you've been kind of seeing.
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly weighs heavy on me and my staff, because we work with primarily a Medicaid population, so a lot of at-risk families and you know, children that are at risk to begin with for reasons of poverty and lots of other things going on. And it's kind of the balance between what everybody's been saying, that we can only do so much. We offer a text, maybe we offer an email, we go old school and maybe send a card to them and say, hey, we're still thinking about you. And then have to have some place of stepping back from it, like Julia was talking about, and Michelle mentioned also, I think, of putting it down and realizing we can't save everybody. And we can, you know, I think on an energetic level, do some sending positive energy out and wishing and hoping them well. And just have that balance of recognizing we can do the things that we can do to reach out to them. And short of having any evidence or information that we think a child is at risk of being harmed, and maybe call for a wellness check. That would be an extreme example where we have some knowledge that, you know, maybe the parent left a really angry text and, you know, said something specific that worries us, then yeah, we can call and ask for a wellness check. But outside of those kind of actual red flags, we offer what we can. We stay in touch in other alternative ways, and unfortunately wait and see, and pray if you're a spiritual person, put spiritual energy, light, love and light out there. And then have that space to be able to let go and just know that we've done all that we can do at the end of the day. And it's hard to leave it at that. Yeah, I know.
Well, and you know, a lot of I'm looking at some of the questions that we've been crowdsourcing and some of the things that are coming up in the chat box, and you know, the unknown is so big right now, and the feelings are big right now. And, you know, there's questions about, you know, what are some strategies that we educators can use to kind of deal with some of this bigness and some of the blurred lines. So there's like, you know, how do we set reasonable boundaries and sort of help ourselves feel okay about setting reasonable boundaries and sort of deal with that anxiety that just the unknown is sort of causing in so many realms. There's unknown of the children we care for and the families. There's unknown about income loss. There's unknown about, what's going to happen when we go back to school, and it's just causing all of this stress. And so I'm just curious, some thoughts on that from the panel for educators.
Setting boundaries is really, really important. And I think you have to do it in a really intentional and maybe even a tough love sort of way. There's a strange thing that happens when you're working from home, especially in this circumstance, where you're 24/7 and you're working all weekend and all day and night. You're answering emails at 3:00 in the morning. If you're not careful and you start sliding into that, that is going to be incredibly detrimental to your well-being. I realized that really quickly in this school closure period here for myself. And even as a self-care person, I felt myself kind of like, whoa, okay. And, it's just my husband and I. So we were like, okay, we need to separate our workspace from kind of our relaxing space. We just can't sit on the couch. And that's where we work together. Like, I needed to separate myself to find my workspace. He had to find his workspace in the house. And then really clearly, my hours, whatever they were in the office, 7:30 to 3:30, generally try to keep as much of a routine as you previously had, but it's hard. I still find myself, checking my work email after hours, which is fine, but just really be careful about that and be mindful about that. And it's okay if you're not checking email 24/7. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be responding to emails in the middle of the night and doing all those crazy things. Really try to keep your boundaries and your routine as much as possible.
And lean on airplane mode if you have to. Like I put my phone in airplane mode when I'm trying to keep those boundaries. Sorry, the light's a little weird. So if I don't have it in airplane mode, I'm much more likely, if it's in my hand, to just like check something really fast, even though I've tried to commit myself. I'm not going to check work emails at 10 p.m. or at 5:30 when I first wake up, So having it in airplane mode just puts one step in between you and that, and gives you a little bit more space and a little bit more time to make a different choice.
That's a great practical tip.
This goes back a little bit to the mindset stuff. So there's these external things that are happening, right? Our kids are not physically in school right now. For many of us, that is a hard fact. And for many of us, we think the kids are not physically in school. We're not physically in school right now. So many of us think that equals stress, or that equals uncertainty, or that equals fill in the blank, whatever your emotion is. But the emotion is coming from a thought. And I'm not saying these thoughts are wrong or bad, or you should even change them. My suggestion is that you just look at what the thought is in the first place. So I might ask you, how are you feeling right now? And you might be like, oh, I'm so stressed out. And I might say, why? And you might say, because of COVID. But that's not really why. It's because of what you are thinking about COVID. And so if you can identify those thoughts and just be with them, again, and I was seeing something that somebody put in the chat box. I know that's not my job, but I can't help myself, because I think somebody had pointed out that, there's all these shoulds, and she's feeling a lot of shame and guilt. Why are you feeling shame and guilt? Look at some of those thoughts that you're thinking about COVID, or about the school being closed, or about online learning. Really, can you separate out the facts from the stories? Because your stories are just choices. And that is a beautiful thing, because that's what you have control over. And our stories are what then causes the emotions. So if you can just take a beat and look, okay, I'm feeling really stressed. Why am I feeling stressed? You might knee jerk and say COVID. No, it's not COVID. Some people are not stressed about COVID. It's because of their thoughts. They're feeling happy. Why are they feeling happy? Because of their thought. Again, I'm not saying your thought's not valid, but can you find your thought so that you have more choice in your life moving forward? You might not change a thought, you might. So I don't know if that's helpful, but for me, that was everything. When I learned that my thoughts created my feelings, I took all my power back, and it just shows you exactly what you have control over and what you don't have control over.
I think that's a beautiful point. And the idea that a thought is not truth, is not reality. A thought is simply a thought. That doesn't mean that you detach from it or detach from emotion, but viewing those thoughts as not something that needs to drive you is important, like all of those brutal, heavy shoulds. And so with that, some practical ideas are using self-compassion and really spending moments in saying something kind to yourself and accepting yourself for where you are. And maybe it's easier for teachers who are always out there giving and aware to share that thought kind of in the exercise that we did, sharing the thought, sharing the feeling that we have and the compassion that we have for another person. That's easy for all of us. But always getting into the practice of bringing that back to ourselves is also a critically important practice. And I think it's those rituals of thought that we come back to the same thought process, whether it's a meditation or whether it's something else that we do on a daily basis for self-care is important. And it also kind of brings, and I don't know as educators how this would sit, but assuring that that there is some kind of end ritual. If you're saying goodbye to children in your classroom because of unknowns or because you know some of them are moving on, what is the ritual that you would like to share with them that would be really beautiful and poignant, that would give them an opportunity to do something with you, perhaps on a video, perhaps collecting ideas and thoughts from families and individuals, that would really help them transition and help you transition as well to whatever new reality we're moving toward.
I love that you bring rituals in, because that's something that it's like one of those things that, yeah, like as teachers, we talk about that a lot as early childhood teachers, like how we incorporate rituals throughout our day. And, you know, I see in the chat that there's some discussion about the grief that we're feeling and people, you know, understanding that, you know, maybe they're not going to see their pre-kindergartners again because they're going to go into kindergarten, or, you know, for whatever reasons, you know, there's lots of endings happening right now, or what feels like endings. So I love that you bring that idea of bringing ritual to it, because I think that is something teachers are good at. Alex, do you have another question from the, I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about sort of educators' feelings and feelings of grief, which we touched on a little bit, and a lot of conversations that have come up in our dialogues has been around this imposter syndrome that I think a lot of us are feeling as we move from something that we know how to do very well to doing it in a completely new manner. You know, some teachers have said, I feel like all of a sudden I've become like a YouTuber. So if you could speak a little bit to sort of strategies for recognizing that that teachers really do know how to do what they're doing, even in this sort of foreign land.
Well, I think the foreignness of it is true for all of us, regardless of our career and vocation. Learning to be a mental health consultant over video has been a real learning curve for me. And, you know, I am, having the parent and child together, and then all of a sudden the child takes off, kind of like you all for teachers. And okay, I guess I'm going to talk to mom now. And so I think we're all in the same boat. And I think rather than consider it imposter syndrome, think of it as kind of explorers in this new adventure together, that we're all learning and using our creativity. And again, I share what everybody else has said about validating the level of creativity that early childhood educators have, and just that love for learning and being creative. Tap into that and know that that's your strength in learning to do things new ways. And really going back to the point that I made before, your face on the screen is the most important thing to the kids that see you, because they love you and they miss you. And seeing your face and having that relational connection, regardless of what you're doing and teaching in that moment, is what's really most important to kids. And that's not anything you have to fake. That's genuine. And that's who you are, and bring that to the screen. And I think the rest will fall into place. But I really think that relational connection is at the heart of whatever you do.
I completely agree, Julie. I think, whether it's teaching or with therapy, all of the statistics say that the number one important determining factor in success is the relationship. It's not the tool. It's not the specific way in which we connect. And there's a kind of a really great opportunity with early childhood, especially in that when we show the places where we feel incompetent, that's a great place for children to get to feel competent and to get to show up and say, oh yeah, I know how to do this, click on this, or do that. Or if they're really young, just to see us flounder. Like if I trip and fall in the classroom, that's often a moment of like tons of laughter because they're still learning to walk. So just reminding ourselves that those moments where we show up as not so confident or not so competent are actually great opportunities to show children that that's normal, and it offers them resilience.
Also, I find it helpful to remind myself that I've been here before, because I don't know, almost every teacher that I've met when they first started teaching had some amount of imposter syndrome going on. So just taking the time to reflect on that time in your life and the fact that you got through it and you're good at what you do, even going beyond that and just writing down the thoughts that are coming up for you around this new thing you're doing, so that you can see them written down and you can find evidence that they're not actually true and you do know what you're doing, and the technology that you're using is just a piece of the puzzle, and you've figured out bigger puzzles before.
I love that. That's such a great thing to remember. So I want to transition us. This time has flown by, but I want to give our panelists an opportunity to share kind of a closing thought with our audience. So I will kind of turn it over to you, and I think whoever wants to jump in first can jump in first and just take a couple of minutes at most to share kind of what your final reflection. It can be a kind of final piece of advice, final reflection on kind of the conversation that's being had, or whatever kind of speaks to you. So whoever wants to jump in first, go for it.
I think I'll piggyback on what Julie was saying. The relationship, that's really what it's all about. At the end of the day, when all of this is behind us and we've moved on, hopefully, to whatever our new normal is going to look like on the other side of this, the kids are going to remember the relationships. They're going to remember how you made them feel. They're going to remember they're going to remember the fun things about it, hopefully, if there are fun things. And hopefully we won't be dealing with a generation of, traumatized youth, the coronials, as they evolve. Hopefully we can find ways, to really build those relationships, keep it in perspective, let them honor their feelings, honor your own feelings, and really, really take care of yourself in this. This is unprecedented. There is no playbook. We're all learning. And I love that somebody in the chat is going crazy with, using this as an opportunity and an opportunity for growth and gifts. And I think those are some of my biggest takeaways and reminders for myself from this evening's panel. So I'm grateful to my insightful colleagues here sharing their wisdom as well. But I think if we look at this and really shift our mindset to kind of look for the beauty and look for the growth and the opportunity, we'll come out on the other side of this okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to jump in next?
I can jump in.
Okay.
So I just want to acknowledge again just the immense value of all of you as educators, and just how critical you are and underappreciated you are. I mean, we should be out on our balconies at 8 a.m. every morning cheering for the educators, and then at 7 p.m. cheering for the medical care providers. But you really are the heroes of our culture, in seeding so much in our young children that will change and maintain our earth in positive ways. So first of all, with that really deep, heartfelt appreciation and gratitude for what all of you do. And again, coming back, both for teachers in terms of self-care and families and what they can do, we're finding joy potentially in lots of different things. Growing something small at home. That moment when you do connect with a relative on Zoom or some other way, and the power of that social engagement that has a whole other value, even though we're not there in person with them. Cooking together is such a beautiful activity, feeding each other, and using each of those moments really as simple human activities that we begin to really zoom into and value for their really great worth. There's so many gifts and opportunities in this huge change. And I'll just say another word, because I've not said sleep at all. And sleep is kind of my world and my life and what I do. I do want to say sleep, and sleep also has changed, as you probably noticed in this era of COVID, and that we can sleep differently than we used to sleep. We can sleep more. Being flexible with sleeping arrangements when a child is fearful does not mean that you're going down a path that you could not retrace or shift to something different. Sleep is a very delicate period for all of us as we're stepping into a period of ultimate vulnerability when we let go and let down at night. So again, around sleep, establishing ritual in the most powerful way helps with all of those transitions. So be flexible with it, value it, love your sleep, because I think that we'll learn a lot from being a rested society, which our culture has not been, at least for the past 150, 200 years. So again, I just want to thank all of you for what you do, and the organizers for really putting together a beautiful and very meaningful symposium. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Sleep, so important.
Yeah, and I'll jump in to follow, and kind of going back to where I started of looking for the gift in this situation, and recognizing and realizing too, I think we focus a lot on the problem areas with this call, but I want to share just a couple of things too about some of the positives, and with what Dr. Lewin was saying too, that I have some kids on my caseload that are getting better. And the reason they're getting better right now is because they're having lots and lots of positive adult time at home. And so that's a good note. I've got coworkers who have kids that are teenagers, that their teenagers are doing better because they're home. They know all their friends are home. They're not competing socially. They're not having to worry about going to school every day. They're not having to worry about all the social pressures. So there are a lot of ways that this has been positive, like families having dinner together. And so I guess that would be my closing thought is again, where I started, circling back to that, is remembering the gifts and knowing that there's some very positive things that are coming out of this situation, that none of us asked for it. We don't wish for it. And yet at the same time, there's some really great gifts that are coming out of it. And lots of kids are okay right now, and lots of families are okay right now. So just remembering that, yes, there's stress, and lots of us are coping well with it. And for the families that aren't, we've talked about a lot of great ideas of ways that we can support them, and in the process, being kind to yourself and taking care of yourself and knowing that you're doing a fantastic job. And I will echo again what has been said about the value of the work that all of you do in early childhood. And I wholeheartedly agree, you all deserve to be paid way more. You're all brain architects. You're working with kids at the time that their brains are developing the most, and your pay scale does not reflect that in the least. So I'm out there advocating for you at a state level. We have a great early childhood program in Colorado, and so there's a lot of advocacy for recognizing the value of the work that you do. Not just monetarily, of course, but that's a big piece of it too. So just know that we are on your team, and recognize and applaud the work that you do. And I thank you for letting me be a part of this today.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's the next step, right? We all need to support the new legislation that Elizabeth Warren is bringing, because it includes steps for increasing pay even after the pandemic. That's my soapbox. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. I do want to echo what Julie just said and what many of you guys have said. I'm learning so much from this. I'm like taking notes over here. But my daughter is pretending all the time that she's getting on Zoom with her class. And she's got her a thank you note that's her computer, and she has my sparkle bottle that's her milk that she gets. You guys, she doesn't pay attention during the actual Zoom call. She's like not hardly even on there, but it's the most important thing for her. I can tell, because that's how she's acting in her play. So I'm just reflecting back to these educators. You guys are pouring your hearts and souls into how do we do a Zoom? How can we support you? And then sometimes you're not getting it back because the kids are like the Zoom set up and they're just, not even in the picture. That's my daughter. But just having that computer open and hearing the voices is everything for her. So I just wanted to say, we are feeling your efforts 100%. And then so much was brought up around grieving and the feeling of grief. And if you are experiencing the feeling of grief, I just want to check in. Are you then actually giving yourself the time and the space to grieve? And what does that look like for you on an individual basis? Because there may be that feeling of sadness or grief, but are you taking it to the next level to process through? And so that's just something to ask yourself if that's relevant for you. And the last thing I'll say is I'm obsessed with panels like this. I love this. I love engaging. I love the connection. Clearly, you can probably tell I'm like a little too excited, So I would, yes, consuming this is great. But what's even better is if you can just take one thing, and I would encourage you to do it now. What is one thing you are going to take from this call and implement into your evening or into your week, whether it's a meditation with the gates, whether it's putting yourself on a should word diet, whatever your thing is, pick one thing and go, because oftentimes these things can go in one ear and out the other. I mean, I'm speaking from my personal experience, but make this as impactful as it is. Take one thing, decide now, and go. And I mean, I know I offered, I'm seeing the shoulds are getting a little bit, and the sympathy, empathy, compassion, thanks, Dr. L, is getting some hits. If you guys want more information, or you want to reach out, or you want help, that is my way to give back to these early educators. BJS knows that I'm here as like the coach to help, because that's what I want to do during this time. So reach out if you need more help, and have the best night ever.
Thank you so much. And I want to just actually share that we have a document we've created with all of your bios and your contact information, because you've all agreed to share your contact information. So we'll make that available on our website as well. All right, we have 2 more goodbyes.
I can go, or?
Go for it.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been such a great learning opportunity to connect with all the panelists. And I know that there's so much brilliance out there too, in all of the faces that we can't see and in all of the chats. And I just want to, I think the main message I want to offer is to invite all teachers to just offer themselves the same kindness that I know that you offer to the children. We can be so much harder on ourselves than we are to others. And so I would love for the idea that self-care doesn't just have to be what it used to be, going for a run or getting a manicure or something, but it can just be you know, what Laura mentioned is in that moment, noticing where we're sort of shooting on ourselves and give ourselves just a little bit of latitude and a little bit of grace in this moment, because we're all in this together and we're all doing the very best we can. So thank you for all of your hard work and for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I want to let Julia talk. And I also want to invite anybody who's still on the call listening, before we say goodbye, we would love for you to post just another word, kind of like we began, of how you're feeling now. And we want to sort of take that temperature again. And with that, I will invite Julia to share some final thoughts.
I'm also just so grateful for the opportunity to connect with amazing people, all of you included. I miss being able to talk regularly with early childhood people. And I just wanted to throw out the idea that all of this uncertainty is being brought into the spotlight right now, but it's always there, right? Like, we never really know what's going to happen. It just feels heavier because it's so clear that we don't know what's going to happen, because our routine's very disrupted and we're not seeing our kids in person. And if you can practice just coming into the present moment and being with what's going on right now and reminding yourself that you have what you need right now, and practicing gratitude, both of those things are really powerful for helping separate yourself from the uncertainty that exists around you. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. All of your words are just really powerful, and I want to just highlight the words that are coming in the chat, because take a look at them. Everyone should, because I think what we've done here tonight is sort of create a space for, you know, early childhood people to be seen, heard, and respected and loved. And so just know that we have so much appreciation for you all as a panel. Thank you so much for, you know, offering your time to this amazing community of educators that is so dedicated. And I think that you've offered so much amazing insight and wisdom that we can all sort of take and chew on. And I love, you know, Laura's point about, you know, what's the one thing you're going to take away and actually put into practice. So yes, as I mentioned, we'll put some of the resources, the recording will be on the website, the chat will be on the website, and we'll share that list of our panelists' bios and contact information. So Alex, do you have any final thoughts?
I just want to share how deeply grateful I am for this time. And I think that what I personally am coming away from this with, and what I think that we all, based on conversations that I've heard, can come away with validation that, you know, as educators, everyone is doing an amazing, amazing job. And I want to thank our panelists so much for offering validation to the work that that the educators are putting into this, and really to that reiteration that connection is above all the number one thing that we want to be focusing on right now. And thank you so much for offering that reinforcement of that. So thank you for joining us. One housekeeping piece is that, as Lauren said, the video will be on the website. We will resume our regular Wednesday afternoon dialogues next week. So if you want to come back and connect, we run those dialogues as more of a dialogue. So we do actually, everybody has a chance to speak and to have reciprocity. And so we hope that you'll join us again next week for our virtual dialogues. And thank you again.
All right, well, we will say goodbye to everybody. And if you want to turn your video on or turn your sound on and smile and wave to us, or, you know, whatever you want to do as you're signing off, that's great. But thank you all so much.
Thank you guys so much. Amazing job.
Thank you.
All right, well, panelists, thank you so much. You all did awesome. That was really inspiring.
Yeah, so
Thank you
wonderful.
so much for
Thank
organizing this.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Yes,
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed being a part of it. I appreciate it.
me too. And I'm disappointed that I missed the first part.
Oh,
And that my life got all weird.
Oh, right. I know, totally. I've talked about that on many calls about how you have to like have different spots in your home for different parts of the day. It's sunny where you live, so that's nice, right?
It is. The sun's getting higher in the sky, so it comes in this window at an angle that it didn't before.
Awesome. Well, Teresa, it was so good to see you.
I know, it was nice to see you too. Thank you so much. Thank you, you too. And everybody, the panelists were great. I learned a lot. I was also taking notes.
I know, me
Yeah.
too.
But there was some good resources in the chat, so that's why I was saying I couldn't save it, but if you could send it to us.
We'll pull all of that out of Zoom and we'll share. I'll send an email to all of you, but we're gonna share it on our website too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you.